Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And also please join us in remembering all those who have served in the military, both here and abroad, and for those who have given their lives for our country. Thank you. So today is Wednesday, February 22nd, and this is the meeting of the Board of Regional Commissioners. And I think we will begin with public comment. If there's anyone here who would like to comment on anything that is not on the agenda. Hearing none. Going to wait a few minutes for Andy Gottlieb to come. I know he's coming. I know he's here, and he'll be arriving shortly. So let's look at Commissioners' actions, and we can consider a vote to approve the minutes of the previous meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. And the next would be the summary of actions, of which there are 11.
Oh, any.
Any questions on any of those items?
I have none.
None.
None? A motion?
I'll move the summary of actions.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous.
Do you want to talk about what we've done while we're filling in?
Yes, we can talk about Commissioner's activities. Oh, here he is. So we'll put that off, and we'll begin with our agenda item, which is a recommendation, or actually it was an actual vote of the Special Commission to have the county commissioners take a very hard and long look at wastewater. They particularly mentioned consideration of a taxing authority, perhaps similar to the MWRA, and this has received a considerable response in the press recently. And I think, in really thinking about this, having a regional plan is very important. And I think all of us, the three of us, recognize that we must move forward on that. And it's our job to take leadership to see that this regional plan comes about, whatever that regional plan might be. But I think to make a decision to move forward without any public discussion or without any public input on voting to recommend a regional plan that includes a taxing authority at this time would not be very wise, and I don't think would show good leadership on our part if we were to do that without fully exploring what all the ramifications are, what all of the considerations ought to be in developing this regional plan. So it would seem to me, and I've had at least a discussion prior to the meeting with Andrew Gottlieb, is that perhaps we ought to consider asking our two principal wastewater leaders on Cape Cod, Andy Gottlieb, Paul Niedzwiecki, and also the Wastewater Collaborative, to perhaps work together to develop something. And Andy, you might want to talk about that and what you think might be a course of action that we could follow based on those items, based on those considerations.
Yes.
I think it would be better if you came up.
Do you want to bring Paul up with
Paul,
him,
do you
or-
want? Yes.
Madam Chair, I may be recording portions of your meeting.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Is anybody else recording?
I think
You are
they're all
recording, and you are from
Cape Cod Broadcasting.
Cape Cod
WQRC.
Broadcasting. Okay, very good.
And a cheerful good morning.
Good morning.
So this is a big project, and this took a lot of discussion, I think, by the Special Commission, and particularly last week. And I think the vote to move forward on a regional plan was unanimous, if I'm not mistaken. And so I think that the push is there. And we all know that some towns have done some things and others have not. Some have moved very far along with their plans, well, like Provincetown and Chatham. And Barnstable has taken a lead. Yarmouth tried to, and I think the town meeting defeated their wastewater plan. Falmouth has taken a lot of initiative in developing wastewater. But I think, pardon me, as a county, we need to show some leadership here too, and really come together with some type of a proposal that has all the elements of a regional plan, whatever that might be, and also a plan that has included a considerable amount of public input. So
I think the question before you and what the special commission did was sort of raise up another level, sort of the desire, I think the growing consensus that looking at things on a regionalized basis is a way to get the problem solved and do it with less infrastructure, lower cost than the existing approach might yield. And I don't think that anybody's suggesting that you guys take a position today on what a regional entity would look like, what its revenue raising capabilities or bonding authorities or any of that stuff might be, but to simply sort of take the recommendation that came from the commission to direct us to get this discussion to the next level, to flesh out what the issues are, what the management structure alternatives are, what the funding alternatives are, what the opportunities to bring in additional resources if we function in a meaningful way as a region, what that potential revenue is, and assess how that would play back to saving the individual ratepayers on the Cape as much money as possible while finding a reasonable way to deal with this problem. And to have us, through a public process, evaluate those options over the next several months, probably frankly by the end of the year, and come back to you and say, this is the process we followed, these are the issues that we were able to identify, this is where we shake out the pros and cons, and then give you at that point something that says, here's an alternative or two that's been vetted, that's been evaluated, here are the pros and cons, and then at that point, and only at that point, would you be in a position to say, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense, we want to proceed with this piece, we don't want to proceed with that piece, and then move ahead. So I don't think anybody was thinking that today was going to be a time when you would take a position on what a regional entity would do and what its authorities are, but this is a very appropriate time, I think, to make and further the political statement that we need to seriously evaluate what our alternatives are on a regional basis and analyze and bring some real thought to the pros and cons and what the questions are, and get out of the sort of 30,000 foot, I like the region, I don't like the region, I want local control, I don't want local control. That all we're having right now is emotional reactions that don't move the discussion forward. So I think today is an opportunity to take the next step and launch a public process that we would both be happy to manage, that will allow you, put everybody in the region in a position to know more than they know now and make an informed decision about what the future wastewater management ought to look like on the Cape.
Okay. Before I go to Paul, I just wanted to say too that in order to get funding outside the Cape, either state or federal, the plan has to be regional or there won't be any money. And I think we should value the statement, the public statement made by our Cape delegation, that they have come together and they are willing to work with us, and they also recognize that. I also think that both of you conducted a very public process in terms of the TMDLs and getting some some more scientific examination of those TMDLs, which included a lot of community input with a lot of public forums. And in the end, I think it was very successful. So who better than the two of you to kind of replicate that whole public process on a regional plan? I think that would have extreme value for the county and extreme value for all the citizens on the Cape, so that they have that ability to participate in a process that they know that in the end that they have been part of, and hopefully they may be able to believe in it and perhaps cooperate in it and accept it.
So we're in complete agreement that that's the way this ought to go, and that this all has come up in a relatively compressed point in time, because I think that there was a sort of a moment in time when people realized that a lot of the research and a lot of the work that's been done over the last several months under your leadership has demonstrated that you can't talk seriously about managing cost and solving this problem and not look at the regional piece in a meaningful way. And so we've had this very unusual convergence of opinion at our political leadership level saying this is something we're compelled to look at. And we have the opportunity today to sort of take the next step in that, and then put the processes along with it that supports it. And I agree with your assessment. The whole peer review science piece was a difficult process, but it was done in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, that level of involvement and transparency provided a product that ultimately became unassailable. Nobody credible has argued that the process wasn't legitimate and the outcome of the process wasn't legitimate. When you can take that off the table, then you're left with the substance. And the substance in that instance was in support of what we've done. I think that, I think if we can run a process that's similar to that on the regional question, we'll be left with the substance. And the substance will say what the substance says.
Paul, I'm sure you want to say something.
No, I just want to clarify that we've been working on a regional wastewater management plan in conjunction with the collaborative for a couple of years now.
Mm-hmm.
It has become a plan that has a finer and finer point attached to it, underlined by the $150,000 that we got from the legislature in the last budget cycle. This plan will be able to link scientific database with a land use database with a fairly sophisticated rate model structure. So it'll be an incredibly dynamic tool that we're going to develop as part of this regional wastewater management plan that we've been working on. And we expect to have that done by the end of the calendar year. So we've been working hard on that plan. The issue in front of the special commission was at the request of the special commission, Andrew and I appeared, and they asked us pretty directly as it related to county government what we thought the county's role would be in that. I think Andrew said that he didn't think the collaborative could morph into something that could handle this, and I didn't think that the commission could do wastewater regionally, other than the primarily regulatory and planning role that it has now. And so the question was, well, if not that, then what? And obviously Andrew and I probably have 35 years of experience between us on this kind of issue, statewide and regionally. And we have given some thought to what that might be, mostly defensively, as we have anticipated this lawsuit and the potential role for us in that lawsuit. And so now I think is the time to start talking about when the plan is done, how that implementation might happen. And I don't feel a need to rush, but I don't feel the need to recreate the wheel in a way where it devolves into something that is weak or ineffectual in the end. So I think we have a window of opportunity probably between now and the end of the year. Because the plan, when the plan's done, with the sort of dynamic tools that will be associated with it, it should be able to answer the question definitively. Will a regional approach provide a better environmental result? Will fix the problem at the lowest possible cost to taxpayers? And that's what, having been through all the CWMPs and having been through the planning process for a while and looking at a lot of cost models that we've done internally, I think Andrew and I both feel that a regional solution would be the least costly way to fix the problem. But we have to be able to express that definitively in order to move a discussion like this forward. But the problem is, that there is always this knee-jerk reaction to any sort of regional discussion about a regional entity and all this paranoia about the MWRA, and I mean it's out there, and we know we have to deal with those issues. But if we don't start to talk about what the structure is, we're just chasing ghosts through the fog. I mean, we don't know. We have to know what the particular structure is for implementation in order to measure that against the existing scenario. Otherwise, we're not giving voters, residents, and citizens enough information to make an informed decision. I really think that's our job.
Bill?
I'd like to suggest that since the chair of the Wastewater Collaborative is here, that perhaps he could weigh in on what he sees the role of the collaborative as our advisory group going forward, as far as what connection that committee would have with this activity.
Larry Ballantyne, Chair of the Collaborative,
Would you like
is
to
here.
come up, Larry?
Yeah, you want to join us in the front row here?
This, the county committee that looked at this came out with a statement that they were looking at a regional wastewater plan. I got that indirectly through our town managers.
You're talking about special commission?
About the spatial commission.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't call that a knee-jerk reaction. We saw that as moving ahead before anyone had any discussion on what the format would be. And coming to it from our town managers rather than through the selectmen's or through the county, collaborative. And I think my concern and some others were this has been a festering issue for us, if you will, the feeling that we haven't been kept up to date on what the commission is doing. We've Paul, I do take exception a little bit to the working with the collaborative on the regional plan because we haven't been doing that. That's been kept from us. We've asked at our last meeting that regional plan information that we'd have some input into that. And for instance, and I don't want to get too exaggerated on this because Paul and Andrew do a great job, so I'm not trying to go too far afield here. So don't take this, don't go crazy on my comments. But I know my concern on the regional build-out plan is as far as I know, there's been no input from the towns, from our local planning authorities. And I know from my experience working with the Pleasant Bay Alliance, which had 3 towns when at one announced 4, is that each town planner had a different definition of build-out. And so I would be more comfortable if there was some discussion in a common definition of build-out, because that's not a trivial matter for us. As you know, with the CWMP process, we need to have a build-out defined, and we don't want to be dishonest about that. It has to be an honest build-out, but quite frankly, we want it to be as optimistic as possible so that we have some flexibility going forward on economic development. And so that's just a minor point, but an issue that I think that's the role the collaborative can play to bring some input in from the towns, and I'd like to see that move forward. My other, I have some concerns about the format, and I like what the direction of this meeting, that just work on that going forward. We're starting a political discussion, so I don't want to go on any of those comments. I will say that my overall concern has been that to move ahead on a regional plan without building public support from the town level almost guarantees that it will fail before it gets started. And if it looks, in all due respect, if it looks like it's being directed to us from the county, that's a tough sell on town meeting floor. We live in an age, we're better than most, but people distrust government. And I deny it all the time that I'm part of government, but people, and as you may from time to time, but we probably are.
Yeah, I think we are.
We are. And so I'm much in favor of what Andrew and Pat, you said, and Paul. Let's start the process and have a discussion. No one's against regionalization. It makes a lot of sense. I think we're all saying back, because in some discussions I get the feeling that there's some confusion on the revenue side of the equation versus the cost side of the equation. Obviously, from everything I've heard, defined regional plan helps us, hopefully it'll help us get money if there's any money available. It's less clear to me until we see some facts on what it does for cost savings. And that's probably dependent on where you are on the Cape. We're in Harwich, we're working with Brewster, we're working with Chatham, we're working with Dennis and trying to do what is most cost effective. We have almost monthly meetings on what our options are. And so we need to, I think, Paul, you said, the facts will tell the story. And I'm comfortable with that. I think, but that's what we need to get into as a factual basis, because to the extent that it is a knee-jerk reaction and it's MWRP, whatever, that's nonsense. It's not. I don't want to go there.
Well, you know what, Larry? I think what we want to do here is take all the work that's been done, and there's been a lot of work done on wastewater by all the towns, by the commission, by the collaborative, and then try to bring it more into focus in terms of developing a regional plan that's going to work.
Yeah.
And the only way it is going to work is if there is public input and public support, and if there's a funding mechanism, whatever that might be,
Yeah.
going forward. And I think that's where we are now, is to try to bring all of this more into focus and develop something that it can really work. Sheila, you wanted
Yeah.
to say something?
I have been on the collaborative since we were signed
3 years
in
ago.
3 years ago, 3.5 years. And I do think that around those discussions, we all have seen that a regional plan is probably the best way to
Yeah.
go. We've had some studies on a small scale. I do think that this, I've had people from the Outer Cape call me on this issue, and they're fearful that they will be either forgotten. Their needs are different. They're not the sewering area. And and there is this feeling that today is the day that we're endorsing a regional entity. And my feeling is that this is a good place because it starts the talk towards the solution. And is the solution a regional plan? And if it is, does it work? Does it really save costs for the taxpayer? And that is our ultimate goal. We have two goals, to fix the problem and to keep the costs low. I also think that it's a great opportunity for us to be able to send signals to state and federal government that we are taking this very seriously as a region, and we are working together as a region, and we are looking at our alternatives. So don't come down on us and giving us your solutions while we're really working at this, and it could buy us that time.
Yeah.
So I look at this as a step forward, and then if once this document and once this plan is arrived at and put together, then people can say this is good, bad, or indifferent, or this includes us and doesn't include us. But I agree with you. I think that the collaborative can encourage, keep people non-emotional, but looking at this situation where how is this going to affect you, and what are all the facts that you can bring in to help us come with a conclusion. And I do think that that's our role as far as the collaborative in reaching out to these planners and various departments of various towns.
The other thing I want to say is I don't want people to perceive this as a delay. Well, here's another delay tactic, to avoid making a decision or avoid not moving things forward. It's not really a delaying tactic, and it's not passing the buck. Yeah. It's asking the people who have been most involved in the regional planning of wastewater to take it to the next step is really what it is, and to include or to actually engage the public more in the process so that they really understand it.
Yeah.
It was pretty clear, based on the special commission's meeting the other night, that many people perceive that as moving forward to something similar to an MWRA, and we're nowhere near that decision yet. But we asked the special commission to be bold in their recommendations, and they were bold in terms of that recommendation.
And that's an important point that we've discussed. I know Linnell's here, but we discussed at the collaborative, and I'm missing our Harwich Water Quality Task Group this morning.
Thank you.
Because I'm here. But the point I'm making is that you're welcome. But the point I'm making is that we're not unique. We're running a parallel track that we want to be careful with. We basically, from the town side, are ignoring these discussions because we're trying to move ahead on a wastewater plan for various reasons. We feel we want to get it done. We think it's somewhat defensive against the CLF to say we're moving ahead. And I think all the towns are pretty much doing that. So that's something we have to be sensitive to, that this isn't seen as a holding action while we work on this plan. But that's not the intent, I think
what this is, what this is not as an ability. I mean, right now you've got town by town because that's all the system allows for, right? Yeah. And if you get inter-town cooperation, it's because you got some enlightenment among adjoining towns that want to work together. Yeah. There's no comparative analysis at this point about the cost of the current process versus what the potential cost would be in a more broadly based regional one. And I think we owe it to the individual taxpayer to be able to say, we've done an analysis of what we've got now versus what the alternative could be. And it comes out where it comes out, and people can decide they want to go the low-cost route or they don't want to go the low-cost route and they're willing to bear the burden of the additional cost because for certain types of reasons. And we don't know that now. And really all you're doing today is saying, do that analysis and have the conversation that builds the public confidence in the legitimacy of the analysis so that we can look at the two outcomes and make a choice as a region. That's all.
Yeah.
And, and I think, frankly, collectively remiss if we don't do that. I was talking to Lynell also this morning, and I pointed out to her,
We keep throwing your name out there.
Yes.
But
I was one of the initial sewer commissioners in Mashpee in 1987, and if you took the agenda for one of our meetings from 1987, you would be hard-pressed, substantively, to notice a difference if I substituted that for what they're going to talk about next month. It's the same issues, it's the same conversation. What do we do about Popponesset and Barnstable? What do we do about Wacoit and Falmouth? 1987. It's 2013. At some point, we got to look at and really look at, what we're doing and where it's leading us and at what cost, and is there a better way of doing it?
I think just to finish that, kind of wrap around at the beginning when the document came out from the spatial review, it looked like an endpoint had been reached without the discussion. I think what I like is the discussion we're having now is let's look at all our options. I think that's absolutely critical, and then see where it ends. Mm-hmm. And it could end there, it could end somewhere else, but we owe that to everyone. I fully agree with that.
Yeah, and if I can just add one more point to it is, through our discussions and having the towns report of where they are and what they're doing, we've also had those discussions as, do we hesitate? Do we stop doing what we're doing? I mean, are we doing the right thing, or do we go towards a regional plan? Should we just put this all on hold and focus on a regional plan? And because there has not been another structure, an alternative structure, we've had to pursue the current course. Yeah. And now people who have been very vested in that work, whether they're town employed or volunteers of that town, they feel an ownership and, wait a minute, we have something to say here, and we've been doing this work, and is this going to interrupt our ability to get funding or to go forward? So I think that has to be allayed and have people relax that this work is important, and it is going to have, their input is going to be part of this plan. And that's really sort of that knee-jerk fear that I see out there, but I don't think it's something that cannot be overcome.
If I could follow on that, I didn't mean to characterize the collaborative's response as knee-jerk. Obviously, I've received other emails, along the road.
That's okay. We don't have to pick on your fault.
But and I mean, I'm sensitive. I was the first chair of the Water Protection Collaborative. I was the assistant town manager in the town of Barnstable as the largest wastewater treatment facility on the Cape. I understood the issues back then. They haven't changed at all either, and there's still the issues that we face now. I don't want to rush to have a discussion about a particular format or entity prior to being able to answer the questions that I believe this plan will answer. And so that's why I think putting them sort of on a dual track is a good thing. But and not from anyone who's in the room today, but from others who simply suggest that by using the word authority, that we can't use words. We have to be careful about what words we use or how we describe it. I think that's disingenuous. I mean, that's not having enough confidence that people are going to be able to understand what we're talking about. Or I think it's taking people for granted that they're not going to know what we're talking about. All we want to do is get to the point where we have a factual basis to make a determination about how to move forward. But I would impress upon everyone here today, we are not the only actors on this. There are outside forces across the bridge that are starting to push forward. And my reluctance is we've been talking about this problem for decades with very little movement, for the most part. But we haven't really been talking about a solution. And the longer we continue to talk about the problem and not talk about the solution, the more we risk having a solution put upon us and designed for us. So I think what I heard from the Special Commission is, no, we need to take advantage of a limited window of opportunity we have right now to define the solution for ourselves with the sensitivity that we have to our communities and our neighborhoods here on this peninsula that someone across the bridge is not going to have. And so I think it's imperative for us to move forward and have that discussion and be able to have it openly and honestly without fear of some sort of political reprisal because you've used a particular word or you want to put some flesh on the bones of a particular regional concept.
I'd like to just point out that one of the things that comes out of an analysis is a definition of what the functional responsibility is. Once the functional responsibility has been defined, I believe that a form follows that fairly quickly. I also had an epiphany when I was at the Community Leadership Institute. After you gave your presentation on the urgency, one of the participants said, "I did not know before I heard this story as to how important it was to move forward." And she made the point about we need to communicate and go to where people are in order to get the story across. And I was reminded that whenever we run for public office, we knock on doors, we go to where voters are to tell them the story. Now, it's my hope that the collaborative would facilitate the process of communicating with the towns that you represent, that you would that somehow you would hear the goals of this functional analysis and have the input into those goals. I don't think that anybody suggests that wordsmithing, to come out with it has to look exactly this way. But I think it's important that be a congruence of agreement on the goals going forward, and then I think as you flesh out the plan, as you go to the communities, as you reach out to people to find out what is the best way to communicate this story to those people that matter, which are the people who pay the bill, so that they can both understand how important it is to move forward and also accept the responsibility of paying for it. And I think that's where all of this is.
Yeah, just a couple of points. I agree with you, Bill. We have talked a lot to decision makers. At the commission, we've done watershed tours where we try to talk to average citizens. Sometimes it's tough to get them out of their home. But as it relates to decision makers, whether it's EPA or DEP or the Secretary of EA, DEP, the Water Infrastructure Statewide Report recognizes the problem, the size and the scope of the problem on the Cape, and it recognizes the need to regionalize a solution in order to move forward. So it's not just the administration, now it's the entire delegation, now it's the professionals on the Cape, the professional managers in each one of these towns. So there is, and now it's a special commission, so there is a growing consensus that we at least have to put this on the table because the initial indicators are that this will be better for citizens. We need to find that out. The next step is to deal with boards of selectmen and make sure that they are informed, and then to deal with the general population, and that has to happen. But there is as much consensus on this approach as I've ever seen on any issue of public policy that involved the region.
And I think that for the average citizen, they also see that, why are we doing this? Why isn't there a regional plan? But when that is proposed, the fear is, okay, I mean, that makes sense, but what is it still going to cost? And that is where this exercise of you fleshing that out will put more of a realistic estimate on what that would be.
Yeah, because I would argue there's not consensus
where the public
yet
will be really, they'll be able to see how it's going to affect them, and then they have a voice to say something.
Just on that, as the consensus has come down with policymakers, we have to be cognizant of what's happened out there on a town-by-town approach to date.
Right.
Now, Chatham got theirs through, but with tremendous scars, and they got it through with the best financing plan any of these 15 towns is going to be able to do on their own. It's not replicable in any of the other 14 towns.
Right.
Could you mention what that was, just so?
Well, they started retiring debt service 10 years ago, and so that kept the line steady so that they could make room under the capital budget to sort of swallow this project. They were shovel ready when the stimulus funding came out. They got ARA funds. They got $20 million RDA agricultural grant for rural development. So that's the best possible.
They got a $60 million facility that's got hitting their tax rolls at 21 cents per thousand. I mean, nobody else is in a position to do that.
They had the foresight to be lucky, foresight enough to be lucky. That is not replicable in any of the other towns. So we need a different approach there. But when you see in these other towns that have struggled mightily to do the right thing and bring programs forward, there's a predictable series of events. Everybody recognizes the problem. I mean, if you've lived here for more than a generation, you've recognized the problem. You've seen the eelgrass go away. You've seen the decline in water quality. And so when they recognize the problem, they say, we've got to solve it. So then they put a price tag on the solution. And once that surfaces locally, they question the science, they question the engineering, they vote no at town meeting. And that's why we have a lawsuit. And that's why any sort of process that we start that is completely wide open, and I would have to say hyper respectful to the communities, is probably destined not to be strong enough to get the job done. In a sense, even the collaborative itself is a voluntary organization. You have to volunteer, and Bill had to go around and basically promise that it would never have bonding authority, never do this, never do that, that it would be what it is. And even with the commission, Cape Cod Commission Act passed regionally, every time there's a bad decision against one development, a community threatens to pull out. Those are the kind of structures that have been regional structures that we've been able to achieve with this total act of consensus and fanning out and doing what we need to do. Neither of those organizations is strong enough to get this job done. That's just the reality. And it's not going to be recognized as such. So we have a limited period of time to define the solution for ourselves. And I got to tell you, I am not in favor of sort of a unilateral approach here. But I have to tell you, if I thought if the threat was purely environmental, I think we could wait for the towns. I think we could find another way through some sort of confederated approach in joint watersheds to get some of this done. We could take a little bit longer. We could figure out the regulatory stuff. But it's not just an economic imperative. It's not just an environmental imperative. It's an economic imperative. And the no action scenario has the most serious economic implications for this peninsula. And the possible scenario of a federal implementation of a plan on us, again, has drastic economic concerns for this area. That's why I feel the need to move now. Because it's not just a potential environmental disaster that's happening right in front of us. It's an economic disaster that's very near. Just to get to Bill's point one more, and the point about why don't more people know? Well, it's no secret that we have a seasonal economy here. And there are people that don't want you out there talking about how bad certain water quality is and marine ecosystems are if you have to attract people here to spend their money on vacation. But the Chamber has come to the point where they recognize that it's an imperative to talk about it now. But that gives us a limited window. I really think we have 12 months. We have 1 year to come up with a solution. If next spring we can say to the people that come here every summer that well, yeah, we know the water quality has degraded, but we're going to fix it. Even if it's over the course of a generation, they'll still come. But if we dither, we take our time, if we wait for court action, that economic decline will start rapidly.
The environment is the economy. I've heard you say that many times.
It absolutely
It is
is.
absolutely true. So I don't think there's, speaking for myself, and I hope the other commissioners agree, that we should give you a charge to do what you suggested, and then come back to us at a time certain, both with progress reports as well as the final time, and then at that point we would have enough information to show that we have incorporated the input from the community that suggests the best way to get to their heart with regard to getting their support, because this is a political issue, it is an emotional issue, but it's not rational to avoid doing something about it.
Right.
And it's a pocketbook issue, and so really,
It is.
probably more than anything else. I mean, we understand the environment. A lot of us do. Maybe some don't. But basically, it's really a pocketbook issue, and that's what we have to address. So do you have a...
Yes, I have a motion that I would like to propose, and it is that the Commissioners support the investigation of the creation of a regional entity capable of solving the Cape's wastewater problems. The Commissioners direct the Executive Directors of the Cape Cod Commission and the Water Protection Collaborative to undertake an evaluation of the options for regionalization and to develop draft legislation to implement any required changes. The executive directors are expected to undertake this task by fully involving the public in their work and shall ensure that their recommendations incorporate and take into account broad public input, including input from the collaborative and from the commission.
I'll second that. And then, are we going to ask for this?
Discussion on the motion, yes. Any discussion on the motion? I was hoping Linnell would come back, because I thought she might have some comments to make.
Just a time frame, maybe to draw a little bit boundaries around the time frame.
By the end of the
I know you
year, we
mentioned-
suggest by the end of the year.
Yeah, keep in mind, then they'll need to do some decision-making thing, and there's probably a legislative piece that's going to emerge,
Well,
which would
that's-
be perfect for January.
Right.
So,
I think if we say by the end of the year, it allows us to sort of track the substantive development of the tools and analysis that comes out of the regional plan. We can certainly come back and update periodically.
Yeah, is
But
that in there
I
period?
did-
So I would,
Yeah,
so maybe
that's-
every 3 months, so we have March, April, May,
Well, this
June,
is
July,
February.
August, September, October, November, at least, so there's 9. I would say maybe every 3 months.
April, July, October?
So we'll go through a trimester approach on the.
Yes, how would that be?
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
what
just
do you
like we're
think?
having a baby.
Or maybe May,
It's like
May,
giving birth.
August, and October. Give you a little, maybe 2 to 3 months
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
have
just to give
something
us an
going.
idea of
That's fine.
what the
Yeah,
discussions are and that sort of thing.
Just progress reports is really
So
what we're
to
interested in.
and we'll report back.
Yeah.
And then we've got a collaborative
Not-
governing board, steering committee on Thursday next. We can
Yeah.
talk about process with the steering committee and then
Be-
following
yeah.
with the governing board the following week.
I'm going to put
Good,
every
because
8 to 10.
Not part of this, but I would like a more fully developed schedule on the steps
May.
going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think this
May,
sort of gives us a step in the
October.
charge,
October.
and then we can work on the details.
May, August,
Starting next week.
and October.
That's not set in stone, but
Yes.
somewhere around that. I mean, if you call and say, we have some really
If
good
there's something we really need to
information
talk to you
we wanna
about,
share
we'll
now,
say we need to
or
talk to you
Yeah,
about it.
we're
say
here, you know, you can always
Right.
get on the
That
agenda.
we have some information that we want to take up with you.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I am
too.
too.
I
I
think
think
it's a very
I think we're
positive
now
step.
talking about solutions.
Well, it's a
and people
great
can,
step forward,
Yeah.
and it kind of puts a cement around the problem.
Okay.
so you need to move,
So we-
vote on the motion.
Yeah, we have a motion
So
and a
it's
second.
second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed, unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're off and running.
Yes, good luck.
We
Well,
are.
thank you.
Watch out
Great,
for,
thank you. And the recess, we are now reconvened, and we have with us Dan Gallagher, the president of CEO of Open Cape. And welcome, Dan.
Thank you.
We have another big project on the horizon. So
Yes.
maybe you'd like to just give us a brief summary of where we are and what the next step might be for the county.
So it was really helpful and familiar to me to hear that last discussion about regionalization of water treatment and quality, because it's not actually very unlike what I'm talking about. You can think of fiber optics instead of sewer pipes, you'll transition right over. So we've had a long history, obviously. As you know, the first money that Open Cape received for its seed funding was from the EDC, $50,000. And we, with you, Open Cape and you all, have had a long history as well. And I sent you I sort of summarized that in I think one of the documents that's in your package. It goes back to 2009, where the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy identifies Open Cape as one of its first goals, in fact, and it underpins many of the other goals of the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. You supported us with letters to the NTIA as a partner in this effort to build an infrastructure and a regional services opportunity for our communities. We formed a partnership in that regard in 2009 to achieve the common goal of regional services for the communities. You donated the building through an RFP process under Chapter 30B, the former public safety building to us, with the obligation on us to renovate that and create a place where, frankly, regional services can be delivered and managed. And I'm here to tell you that we are making tremendous progress at this point in meeting all of those obligations to you. The network is being built. In fact, they started in Brockton and Providence, they're moving this way, but new crews will start in March 1st on the Cape. You'll see trucks now, but they've already moved from Brockton into Bridgewater and East Bridgewater, and they're in the Providence moving into Fall River area. So the building of the fiber optic network that will eventually complete Cape Cod is well underway and will be done on time, January of 2013. The Regional Co-location Center, which we received the lease from you, we're investing about $3.5 million into the renovation of that building, and that is well underway. If you've been up, and I encourage you to drive by, the elevator shaft on the rear of the building is already there. The framing inside of the building is complete. The fire suppression piping is all installed. The plumbing for the bathrooms is complete. It's moving along. We expect it will be done, and we'll begin to occupy at the end of May and early of June. We're very grateful to all of you once again for allowing us to have temporary offices down in the Commission building. But I'm sure everybody wants us out at some point. So but we have the horizon's in sight, and we're going to get there. And when that building is done, as you know, it'll have 3 floors. The ground floor will be a regional co-location center for leased space of both business and government server space. About 40 racks will be available in there. The first floor, our offices will be there for Open Cape, and the network will be managed from there, as well as there's a shared, very large conference room that will be in that space for the county complex use. And the top floor will be 2 offices and open cubicle area space for Regional Services Operations Center, what we called it in our grant. Basically, where are you going to manage and these kinds of regional services like GIS and e-permitting and licensing. So I wanted to give you that first update that we've made tremendous progress and that we still plan to be done on time. So that's happening. So the other thing is, and I sent this history to you, again, our history goes back to 2006 in developing these capabilities for our region. That in fact, I think it's on the face of it, it's clear to everyone that delivering a lot of services, permitting, licensing, inspection, GIS, even telephone systems regionally, is clearly the way to go for us. And we're building those capabilities. Not only are we building a physical network, but the municipal regional area network will connect all of the towns on 1 gigabit circuits within the towns on upper level 10 gigabit circuits to create a regional network across Cape Cod where common applications and services can be aggregated and provided to one another in a shared format, thus saving everybody costs and improving the capabilities that they have, which is all a good thing. So we've come a long, long way, but we are now at a point where we need direct and formal leadership from the county. I think, and that's what my request to you was, that the county, and the special commission did vote on this last week as well as the wastewater, to support the creation, to support the commissioners in developing a formal capability in this area. So I've made a request to you because I'm at the point where decisions need to be made that I cannot make, or I have to go in an alternative direction if I do not have counterparts with which to make decisions. So I've asked you, and I think this is what the special commission endorsed as well, is that the county commissioners create a department of some form to lead regional services, technology services and telecommunication services and applications on behalf of the towns. That department have dedicated staffing to implementing this. I've talked a lot with different folks within the county about different aspects of this, and Paul, the Smarter Cape Partnership is another group that's very interested in seeing this happening. There's a very great need for governance and direction. The towns, acting upon, frankly, our past agreements and actions and decisions, and the county, in fact, issued an RFP on their behalf for further expanding their involvement in this. As you know, Falmouth voted to appropriate $120,000 to expand by 10 the number of buildings that are connected. Provincetown 2 weeks ago did the same thing, appropriating, or the selectmen voted for town meeting to look at a $200,000 appropriation to expand the number of connections in Provincetown. So all of the towns are sort of clamoring towards me to say, what's the direction? What's the governance? How is this paid for? How do we divide the cost? All these decisions keep coming to me, and I will not and cannot make those decisions, because all of that layer belongs to you and the county, under the county's leadership. So I guess I'm here to ask you for your formal endorsement to move forward on your behalf, not for Open Cape to do this for you, but for the county to create a department staff it, fund it, and give it a charge to develop. The governance structure, the costing models, will it be an enterprise account? How will those costs be shared? Who will pay them? Who can participate? Who cannot? And then going down the road to make those later decisions about what application's next, how do we acquire it, who supports it. There's many, many, many decisions related to what is, some are very forward developed. The e-permitting licensing, you've probably heard a lot about that, is very far forward, ready, a lot of decisions to be made on that. And how is it going to run, and how are people going to pay for it? What's the governance model? People are clamoring for this, frankly, and I guess I'm here to ask you to formally take responsibility for that leadership.
It seems that when you mention e-permitting, that seems to be a consideration or an involvement with the planning process, since that's something that there is interest, and the Howard Committee that is looking at this is meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow night, and they've been meeting on a regular basis, and they've identified, some, let's say, some issues with regard to connection. But if it's being led by an e-permitting approach, it seems that it suggests a place where it should reside as far as direction.
Yeah. So if you just
county.
think, Bill, of the e-permitting and license as one application among what will be many. We don't want to create a governance and finance model for each one of those applications as they come along. We want the regional services department, or whatever we're going to, has decided to call it, for that to be the place where these decisions are made. Now, with each specific application that comes along, they're going to look to the expertise within the towns, if they're in the governance or the county, for expert knowledge, right? It might be, and again, I don't want to presuppose what that model will be. That's for you all. But if you had a governance model where the county were the chair of that committee leading the effort, and it had a town participation, the town would designate their representative. But clearly, if you were dealing with permitting and assessing, you would call in experts from the towns to participate in the decision-making and planning for that. So, and each of these applications can come from different places. So some of them might be the county initiative. In this case, actually, I always thought that regional GIS would be the first one we'd initiate, because the county has a very strong GIS shop. And there's a clear need for a regional element in that. But Yarmouth and then Harwich, really, that bubbled up from that level. So clearly this doesn't have to come from a top down, it comes from bottom up, and this one did. And all the towns, 14 or 15, I think, signed off on the $500,000 grant application to implement the e-permitting. Because it's clear to everyone, this would be great if we had this. So, but you want to put that under an overall governance model and umbrella, and that's really where I'm looking for the county to take that lead and designate resources and personnel and responsibilities and accountability, so that I have someone I can go to for these kinds of questions.
I'm looking at the recommendation. I think this is the recommendation of the special commission.
Right.
Which says the county should undertake several actions. 1, to procure a consultant experienced in the formation, marketing, and operation of public network services under the RUS, who will assist in the writing of an RFP for vendor or vendors to develop the regional area network and services for a RUS network.
Actually, that's not.
That
that was the original one. They replaced it.
Oh, they replaced it.
They replaced it completely.
Oh, okay.
And they basically, I think they concluded, and I don't want to speak for them, but the train has left the station. We've been working on this for 3 years. They were endorsing you're moving forward on this, given what you've already done as a whole comprehensive action that's been taken over 3 years. They were saying that they endorsed the county moving forward in a leadership role to move this concept forward and implement a regional services model for the town, schools, libraries, and then the rest of the language.
And in order to do that, the county would have to put out an RFP?
Well, there's several things that the county would want to do. One is, I'd say, identify an organizational body, a department, or call it regional services department, or whatever. You're going to have to determine what that might be. But create a regional services department for development of and implementation of these kinds of applications. I would recommend that you identify a staff role, a senior leadership staff role, to fill that position, that you fund to do that, and then charge that person to move forward in developing the financial model, the structural model, the governance model that will work for these multiple applications that will be implemented over time.
So where does the RFP come in? What would be the intent of an RFP?
So there are some RFP, and this needs to be, and Elaine could probably help with this. one of the things that has to happen, again, this is, even though we have a partnership with, Open Cape does with the county, right, to move this forward, we're still treated like any other vendor in the world when it comes to procurement of services. This is why we had to do the whole RFP for the building, to do the lease, right? Even though we all knew there's no one else can answer this, no one else can do this, there's a comprehensive package of services that go along with this. So there's a need for an RFP from the county, as one of the recommendations that I gave you, that the county issue an RFP for the municipal regional area network that's going to connect everybody together.
Oh, okay.
Now, that could be maybe a sole source for something to Elaine to look at. Can that be done as a sole source provider arrangement, or must it be an RFP? Again, because we're probably the only person in the world that can answer this. So that's where the RFP comes in.
Yes, so let me take a step back. Sort of, I think the whole notion of an RFP sort of gotten locked into your mind. The RFP is just sort of the tool to get you to what you want. I think you have to take a step back. Remember, Dan, we put $75,000 in the 2013 budget for exactly this sort of purpose, because there's this opportunity out here that Open Cape presents that we not sure how to use right now. The e-permitting, e-billing is out there, GIS is out there, but there's other pieces that we're not sure what they are. And I think maybe in the interim, what we can do is, through the town managers, is maybe put together a small group that can sort of, you talked about things percolating up instead of it being top down, that can identify some of the things that they might want to do out there,
and that's
regionally through the Open Cape system.
Well, and that's why I think, again, I recommend, if the county leads and has a department with a leader in that department who takes this forward, right, they need to have a governance committee that includes the towns to identify those applications, right? That's where that feedback is going to come from, that you need to have a governance. But again, now I've been doing this informally through the Smarter Cape Partnership. We have a Smarter Cape Government Committee, right? There's a lot of town managers, et cetera, on that. And again, they're grappling with and still working out the concept of these government services, right? What is it? Now, they're going to even provide probably some recommendations about what the governance should look like and what the finance should look like. That will be helpful to whoever does this role, right? So I think, but again, you want to have that all formalized and have the county in the lead position. There may be other members of the governance, for example, the Clams Library Network. They're going to participate in this. They're going to pay part of the bill probably. You may want to have them in this because, again, they can contribute to the conversation of how you implement things and what you implement. The other thing is, and I know Paul, the Smarter Cape Partnership had met with Secretary Bielecki about three months ago, so I guess it would be. And we talked to him about several things, and that's sort of where the $500,000 grant came from that. And the other thing we had talked to him about was potential state support for this regional implementation, right? And Paul, I know, sent a letter to him requesting $150,000 a year for 3 years to support the implementation. Again, it could help with the staffing cost and stuff like that to get this going. Because, again, it's something that's going to grow over time. It can occupy the space up on the top floor, and it really needs to be formalized and move forward in that fashion. Because, again, people are trying to make decisions in towns about how is this going to work, how much do we need to allocate, if we want to expand our participation, who do we do that with? And they don't have anybody to talk to at this point.
Sheila?
Yeah, I think that from the beginning, and I'm not even sure if you want that role, but the possibilities of Open Cape, was attractive to the county because of the GIS capabilities and for us to offer those regional services. And I do know that even from the experience of having the building inspector with the town of Wellfleet, the first reaction, and I believe you were at that selectmen's meeting, somebody was with me, where a member of the audience had said, does this mean that they're going to dictate our building codes? And that's something that has to be understood, that this is a service that adapts to the town's rules and regulations, and it's just a tool for them to use, not a regulation that we're implementing. Right. So that is number one. But also, you've been in the commission, and they're going to rely heavily on this. So I was just wondering where the Cape Cod Commission stands on this. And
well, we've been working with the Smarter Cape Partnership and Dan really right from the beginning as part of a SEDS project, and they've been living with us, so that's all been good. They've been good roommates.
But there's lots of synergy that's going on in discussions,
Well,
right?
No, when I look at sort of the future of what we're going to do, for example, my GIS department, I have people there that have been there for 20 years. They used to literally draw lines on maps, paper maps, and color them in. And it was a breakthrough when they got parcel level data anywhere. We have moved so far beyond that now, where we're using ARC server to GIS server, so that GIS department is no longer a reactive department. That GIS department is now helping us in a proactive way, providing expertise on the development of some of these wastewater tools. So the nature of that department has changed completely. So they're not just people you go to ask for maps anymore. So they are becoming more of a strategic information office, and that's really where they need to go. Now, they have the GIS capacity, and if we had, or when we have Open Cape connection to like Truro, for example, we could provide fairly direct GIS services at a very low cost to the town of Truro. And we could do that with other towns. Now, the big towns that have robust GIS departments will hang on to them. But even in those scenarios, we could have a wholesale retail relationship with them. For example, every town has to do their own flyover. You know how much it costs to get a plane up in the sky and take a picture? One plane, one day, one flyover for all of us, and there's tremendous cost savings there. And when you start to look at sort of on the e-permitting side, acquiring some of the software, there was a magic number that Ed Centeo and Yarmouth ran across, was about $250,000. So it costs as much for one community as it would for the whole region. So we're following a natural economy of scale that we see developing in information services. And we need that information. For example, we have GIS, we could have e-permitting. We're in discussions with UMass Dartmouth SMAS program right now in the Mass Estuaries Project to set up a municipal service center so that once the wastewater solutions are sort of set up, towns can then go in and be members of this and run their own modeling runs depending on what they want to do in order to set it up. And it'll get through that log jam that we have of having to go to MEP all the time. But even beyond that, if you look at regionalized assessing data, to have all the assessing data in a uniform format, held electronically at the county level, would give us such a competitive advantage when writing grants and moving forward. And even as a result of the e-permitting thing, if we knew, which we don't, it's sort of a right time or real time status of building permits on the Cape, it will allow the Cape Cod Commission to tailor its regulatory approach to be less one size fits all and more impact based on the reality of what's happening out there. These are the kind of information feedback loops that we need to sort of gather the information on, think strategically about in order to provide better services that are less expensive to the residents and to not overregulate. So I think that this is incredibly important for the Commission, and I see it as really the future of regional government, is that sort of ability to sort of synthesize information on a regional basis and think critically about it and derive public policy from it.
Well, the cover of The Economist this week has and it speaks to the overregulation within the whole, the whole country, that we need to reduce the amount of regulation in order to support what we need in order to move the economic development process forward. So I think that's right on target.
And the other thing, the thought that went through my mind, we always say that we are a county unlike every other county in the United States. We have unique characteristics to our government, our organization, how we function. But one thing that we do have that is similar is the planning function, which is the Cape Cod Commission. Only we don't have, as a county, and the people who are part of this county have access to that kind of information that they need. And this is going to allow that to. I went on the website for Montgomery County in Maryland and Fairfax in Virginia, because I used to live in both of those counties at one time. And I'm looking through it, and it's amazing the amount of information that you can get. And that's what we have yet to really build and offer to the member towns, is all that information which Open Cape will allow to happen.
Which is two things on it. I mean, we've started to make progress through Stats Cape Cod and our partnership with the EDC to make more of that transparent and to develop benchmarks that average people and businesses can go on and get good information from. And that's going to be another continued trend for us. But the other thing is, when we talk to IBM and SMAS, we collect so much water quality information on the Cape. none of it is tied together.
Mm-hmm.
If we could, in a single place, tie all of that information together and make it completely open and transparent to everybody, then you would invite institutions of higher learning that would want to come in, that don't have access to that kind of information anyplace else. And potentially, they develop new technologies which help us deal with some of our environmental challenges going forward. So, you know, I think it's very entrepreneurial, it's good government, and that it increases accountability and transparency.
Now, is this what would be part of the RAN, the Regional Area Network?
So the regional area network is the underlying network that connects them all together. You have to have that to make these services available.
Okay.
So Open Cape's responsibility ends at that regional area network, right? And there's going to be a cost associated with it. Again, that's why we need someone who's going to pay for it. How's it going to be done? How do you share it if you're going to share it? We can't make that decision for you. That's what the RFP would come out to say, okay, here, what is Open Cape going to charge us for this? And then you would decide how you're going to pay for it. Is the county going to pay for it? Is it going to charge a fee to the towns? All that stuff. And each application will be different. If you do the e-permitting and licensing, how does the town pay? Is it a per town? Is it population? Is it by each transaction? All that needs to be decided to make these things actually happen. And that's where there needs to be leadership. That's not Open Cape's.
Right.
I mean, we've done a lot, obviously, to help to develop the concept, but we're at the point now where we have to say, listen, our responsibility ends with providing the regional area network, and then now you step at that top layer for implementing these applications.
So what you're saying is that we really have to identify a department and then identify a person who will be within that department that will work, you know, in unison with the department head or
Yep.
and with the governing board or whatever the structure is that's put together.
That's correct.
To put these out.
To flesh all that out
Right.
and be, frankly, be a leader,
Right.
because it's more than just, you know, kind of a project manager. This is going to be the person that's out there, you know, drumming up the towns, talking to the towns, much as, frankly, I do now, going to selectmen meetings all week long and stuff to talk to people about, well, how does this work? What's it going to cost us? How do we implement it? What more should we do? Now, this is where the county should step into that role.
Right.
Well, my thinking is, you say create a department. Usually when you think about creating a department, you talk about hiring someone to do this work and making that person an employee. So I'm thinking of the value of that as opposed to not necessarily creating a department, but creating a concept or something, and having someone come in on a contractual basis to start to do that. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there for discussion, because how do you really know what a job description is going to be until a person can, I mean, you have to have something from which to hire someone. You have to have a list of responsibilities and relationships and all of that. But I guess I'm not quite clear about which way to go. Go with the department and the employee function, or go with a contract, if you will, that spells out, at least for the beginning, what that person would have to do. Sheila.
No,
You want to?
well, I just feel that it could be given a title, but who is going to take this ball and run with it and make that happen? And to me, and I don't know if you want any more work, but it just seems logical that it would come out of the Cape Cod Commission, or to be, at least oversee this process, because you understand it, you understand the capabilities. You can't be the person, but you can identify who you think, you know, would be the right person. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm...
Well, I mean, the commission has the planning function. I mean, this is the major planning function. And obviously, they are our planners, because we don't have planners. And I don't mean planning. I don't know. Go ahead,
I'd
Bill.
like to suggest we have history in, let's say, in formulating, let's say, a structure in order to start something. The Cape Light Compact, for example, was structured in a way that the county subsidized it. We identified an existing employee, Maggie Downey, had the responsibility to move the process forward. We organized and went out to the community to get support for the activity. We created an independent board that ran it forward. But in the beginning, without the, and this applies to any private sector kind of organization, unless we were willing to put some startup money behind it, it's something that that goes back to the three elements of any successful process: time, energy, and money. It takes more time, it takes more energy, and if you have less money behind it. However, in describing the kind of person that would, let's say, would move this process forward, you're not talking about somebody who paid $20 an hour.
Nope.
Okay,
No.
and the kind of money that's in our budget, if you take a look at that, if you say $75,000 is all you have in the budget to support that, you're basically getting what I would call a middle range manager, and based upon a recent experience at the Cape Light Compact, that in order to get someone at market rate that let's say to do this kind of work, I think we need to talk about two things. If we're serious, and I pose this, is that we have to talk about the kind of overhead you have to support in order to support somebody to be successful in it, and you have to look at the investment in either a contractual, let's say, investment or an employee. But I would be reluctant to hire an employee to begin with, because I think that there's a certain amount of momentum that has to be developed. There's an inertia that has to be overcome, and to expect that out of an employee, I think, would extend the amount of time it would take in order to get
It's
it
the
going.
difference between a scope of services and a job description is really what we're talking about here. And do we go with a scope of services, which can be changed and modified as time goes on, or do we do a job description, which would also have to be changed and modified as time goes on? It could not be set in stone.
Yeah,
So
and I would add
those are.
I would add too that, I mean, part of the reason that we met with the Secretary of Economic Development and asked for the $150,000 was in fact to get adequate funds in there, Bill, to pay for what really is going to have to be someone who can really lead this. Now, in terms of the does it need to be an independent department? Does it, now? No. Now, once you go through all this special commission stuff, and you may want to relook all this, but it can be temporarily placed someplace for the time being to do this. And as far as overhead goes, I mean, I still look at, I know Mark's got an email here I just took a look at about the VM Sandport, because Open Cape is committed to building the basic server infrastructure. And he's got technical expertise within his IT department to contribute to that, and I've engaged them on other things like that. So the overhead can come from that. So what is that? Again, it's a technical answer. I'm willing to buy it, but I don't want to define it for you, because it may be it's an IBM system. It may be that it's a Dell VM system. I don't know, but I'm sure the IT department here in the county could help with that decision making. In fact, maybe it can be done in such a way that it supports. Complement something that you guys already just put a new VM in for your own cells.
Yeah, I never saw, I think the resources that we put in the 2013 budget were for this planning piece. So we don't know what we're doing. We need to figure out what this model's going to be, what the structure's going to be, what services are going to be out there that we're going to be looking. But I always see us drawing on resources from the commission, resources from IT, resources from existing departments to figure out some of these other things. You don't need to set up just a complete separate and independent department that does all of these things on its own. You can draw up, and that's what we do well here at the county. We draw on the talent and the expertise that's already exists.
However, I think the point was made that we need to identify a point person in order to, and let's say in order to move this forward. And I think that that's one of the things we need to talk about, as to where that particular point leadership should reside.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I was just going to suggest that I think that the point leadership should come under the commission, because they know it, they breathe it, I mean, there's a complete understanding of what the capabilities are, and if it came under that point of leadership, then it would. And I'm not sure how you feel about it. I mean,
well, I need it to work.
Yeah.
And I think in a short-term environment, it could be that we could adopt it, lead it, go through governance structures, and I think Mark's right. I mean, the county's done this in the past. You set up an independent structure out there, and then over time you see if it's viable and how it fills in. But I don't think it's a permanent part of the commission.
right.
But we would be willing to sort of work with John
And spearhead that.
I just want to say, right now, in the budget for 2013, you put it in what's called regional services.
Right.
We didn't call it the office. We
No.
we sort of avoided that whole thing. But we didn't want to put it in IT because it's sort of bigger than IT at this point in time, and we're sort of at the formative stage. Parts of it may reside in terms of responsibility with IT eventually, but we don't know that sort of right now. So.
Right, but we also can't wait till July when the 75,000 comes in to get this ball rolling.
Right.
Because Dan's going to be, that only leaves 6 months, and that's not much
Right.
time to.
Yeah, and honestly, from my perspective, we're at a point where either the county is going to do this in a model for paying for some of the services that relate to us is be decided, or we will go in a different direction. Because we're going to have this thing operating in 11 months.
Right.
And so will I go sell town services directly to towns? Frankly, we've always considered the cost of this to be how do we cover the cost? We would make a lot more money selling individual services to individual towns. But we, as you know, are a grassroots, public service motivation. And so we want to see the county lead this, and that's, but I need someone that I can talk to say, what's the decision on this?
And the other thing is, it would create some sustainable revenue for the county, which is one of the goals that we had with the special commission. How do you find sustainable revenue for county government? Because the registry and all of that is up and down and depends on the economy, but buying services like this is sustainable because
and honestly,
towns are going to need it.
There's some very practical things. One is the EDC just issued an RFP to survey every town. This is sort of what you were just talking about, the sewer debate. You're going to have to make some comparison here. Where's the benefit, right? First, you understand what's the baseline, right? Most of the towns don't know the baseline in their towns because all the costs of these things are under little tiny budgets and individual departments. So the EDC put out an RFP, and they're going to fund an audit of every town's technology and telecommunications services. So once that's done, what happens? Who's going to take the ball on that? It's not going to be us. We're kind of finishing up that role. We want someone in the county, though, whoever fulfills this role, needs to say, okay, the data's back from all these audits. What does it mean for us? Where are the biggest low-hanging fruit for us to go after? We've talked before about regional phone system. For example, I was in Provincetown last week with the selectmen there, and they said they did know this answer. They said they pay $60,000 a year in phone bills, $25,000 a year to Comcast for internet services, right? And they asked, what is the municipal regional area network? What would if you just divided this up by the towns to bring it? What is it going to cost Provincetown? I said somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000. And now you can, and then you add the phone system here. I mean, this is the kind of impact we're talking about. And
huge.
But
Open Cape is not going to lead that. It has to be the county, and that's what I'm after.
there is a question that comes up. You have let's see, you get revenue from, let's see, I forget what De Silva's organization is.
CapeNet Corporation.
CapeNet, okay. So does this conflict with what CapeNet's expectation is with regard to?
No, CapeNet fully expects as part of our contract that they will maintain and operate a municipal regional area network on behalf of the towns. But again, because we're treated like a vendor under 30B, they're going to be the ones that respond to an RFP that you put out for someone to build this network. They're going to respond to it. And they're going to have a fee associated with that to maintain it. All the capital costs we're covering.
Right.
It's the ongoing operating costs. It's going to come back, and I can tell you, I know it's going to be under $200,000 for the whole Cape. That's library, schools, and there's all sorts of other things that can be applied to this. Clams is going to participate. The libraries and schools can use E-rate money to offset it. So it's not going to be a flat. It's going to be somewhere under that, and it'll be up to you, frankly, if the contract is with the county, to decide the county's going to pay this fee directly, the county's going to divide it under a model that exists now, like the population model, or the county's going to come up with something else. But that's up to you to decide. So that's where the relationship with CapeNet comes in. They'll be the ones that will respond to the RFP.
The other big piece of this we're sort of missing is the whole public safety, regional emergency.
Honestly, yeah, because at this point, that we've done a lot for public safety. We're in fact, we're going to operate we've created a wireless microwave backup system for them. We're connecting them to the fiber, and we're preparing them for a 700 megahertz mobile public safety system. Just in the bill that was passed last week in the Congress for extending the waiver of Social Security taxes on payroll tax. They included in that thing an amendment that said, we're moving forward with a national broadband 700 megahertz system for public safety, and we're allocating $11 billion to that. We are at the forefront of that. The state now, seeing that happen, has come to us and said, would you guys mind stopping your waiver application that we agreed to do here in the county and allow the state to do one for the whole state? Because there's going to be $11 billion plus in the pipeline for this kind of thing. If we don't build the municipal regional area network, we're not going to be in that position for that money, for the public safety people. They're relying on us to, so it's all interlinked, all this stuff.
Maybe what we should do sort of in the interim, since we don't have any of the answers here and we're not even sure what the questions maybe are, is Paul and I and John Morse and Sean O'Brien need to sit down, probably with Dan, and sort of put together the sort of next 4-month timeline about what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and who needs to do it.
That's a good idea.
Start-
Yeah, because we're
start
not
with that.
ready today to make a decision, but
I
we
mean, I think
can't
the answer to
wait,
Dan
and
is
that's
the
a good
answer is yes.
idea.
I think the county
Yeah, I
Does
guess-
want to do
is
this.
willing to
Yeah.
do this. I mean, I think it makes sense regionally.
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, I think at least today is a statement from the commissioners that the county is going to go in this direction. The
Yes.
county,
Yeah.
how they're going to implement it within the internal structure of the county will be worked out through another arrangement here.
Right.
But that you're going to move forward with it. And I would say that the RFP for the municipal regional area network, or a sole source, Elaine can decide what that is, doesn't have to wait for that. Because again, the timeline is ticking.
Right.
And we need to make
We can-
decisions.
The other thing I would just bring up is that, almost every one of the towns on the Cape is facing structural deficits. And this is one of the answers to really sort of bring down those
Right.
costs and structural deficits, and over time, through attrition, even sort of decreased staffing levels, more dependent on technology. But there's an opportunity, I think, here for the county in this regional services piece to almost create this, what would mimic, a COG in another county, a council of governments, to put together the municipal representation in a way where they come together and talk and facilitate sort of regional services and what happened. But it would be like a digital COG. I think the savings are up there. The fact that you have the county as a partner helps the cost of this thing for every one of these towns. I think it's a tremendous step forward for the county.
And you mentioned revenue, Mary Pat, too. I've been to other towns off Cape, and where I've told them what we are doing here with this, and they're envious, frankly. And they said, if you implement the e-permitting, just as an example, e-permitting licensing and inspection, right? Well, and it works really well for us, right? They asked, how could we connect to that, right? You could sell them services and be making money. And
Well, it's really, I shouldn't have just said that it's a revenue stream for the county, but it's also a decrease in cost for the towns. It
Right. It's
reduces the
huge.
cost of the towns considerably.
It's huge.
So there's a huge mutual benefit here.
Right.
The other thing I thought of, now it slipped my mind, besides that one. Oh, in your little group that you're going to talk about, I think you should include Charlie Sumner, because he's been very involved as a town manager, and he really gets it, and he understands this whole thing, and has been, and just from being on the special commission, he's been a great contributor to that, but he also brings a town manager perspective to it with the town, and he might be helpful. I don't know.
He's
I'm
the
just,
dean of the town managers now.
yeah, throwing it out because
Charlie's a great guy, has a great perspective, so I think he would be a great addition if he's willing to participate.
yeah,
But I think this is a new opportunity for the county to do business in a new way.
right, exactly.
Really giving value to the towns for bringing these services together.
So, yeah, absolutely.
What Charlie gets, because he'll just be frank with you. It's like, I don't want to do
He does.
something. There's
Yeah.
no
Right.
reason why I should do this.
He's
And if you talk
very
to a lot
direct.
of the other town administrators, even on wastewater, like, why would I want to try to swallow that under my 2.5 cap? If
Yeah.
it can be done someplace else. So
Right. And town managers, the town managers meetings, I know you go to most, if not all of them, they're taking this on, and they're really moving
Right.
forward in their own thinking, and they're becoming an important group to influence how all of this moves, whether it's wastewater, whether it's Open Cape and the Russ, but they're very much involved in it, and they're very supportive
Yes,
of it as
absolutely.
well.
And they are really the people that we need because they understand their budget
Yeah.
even more than their selectmen and
Oh,
and
yeah.
their
But we can't
populations.
forget that they are managers of an operation,
Right.
and that we need to include the elected representatives who set policy within their community.
Absolutely. They're in the
And I would
collaborative,
add to
too.
that, Bill, I talk to these folks a lot, because I'm out there at selectmen meetings and talking to town managers. They want this, and they request, they say, what is holding, what next has to happen? What- And I went out to the Outer Cape, I think last week it was, and they have a group out there of the 4 towns that meet, I forget what they call the group. But it includes
Intergovernmental,
selectmen and
municipal,
town managers and all
intermunicipal
that stuff.
something.
And they said to me, what is the next step and what's holding it up? And I said to them, I need the county to take leadership on this. And they said, what is taking, I hate to tell you, but they said, what is taking, we will send a letter to them from us saying, we want this to happen and we want it to happen now. That's what they said to me. And so I have those conversations
Will there
regularly.
be a check in that letter?
When,
I respond to money.
with,
Well, I think that the first week in March, whatever date that is, our first meeting in March, the 5th, the 6th?
Seventh.
7th.
The 7th. If you guys can meet
Yeah, I
in
was hoping we
between,
could
and then
maybe
come back to
meet
us on that
between.
day with a plan. Is
So-
that possible? At least first steps?
is it possible that we even just take a vote saying that we're committed to this process and we're going forward and that we are?
Yes, we can
We
do-
are on board and that we are identifying Mark and Paul and John Morris, and maybe invite Charlie Sumner
And who
and
was the
maybe
other
even,
person?
if you want to.
you
Sean
mentioned.
O'Brien.
And
And
Sean
Sean
O'Brien.
O'Brien, and I don't know if you want to even include Peter Carlson, he's the other person that came to mind, but, and keep it at no more than that, something that you can all work with, and come back and give us that.
No, I mean, I like the plan. I think we should be able to come up with something more concrete, because I think everybody's got something to offer there.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I'm on the road all the time. I would be happy to sell this thing.
Right.
But, I don't have the technical expertise necessarily to go out there.
Right, and that's where Peter and John would be
Included
good,
Dan,
and then
right?
you have the perspective of
Yeah.
safety
And then on
in
March
the
7th,
towns.
come back so that we have something pretty solid, at
I'm not
least
here
to
March
take.
7th.
Oh. Can somebody report for you? I don't think we
Could
should just
we
keep
could
waiting.
do it, we
Yeah,
could
you
always
guys
do it
can
a
move
different
forward.
day if
Huh?
we had to.
Or we could meet on a different day. Or you gone
No,
that
you
whole
guys
week?
can do March 7th.
Yeah, we should have it.
I'm in
Yeah.
Boston.
Yeah, that's 2 weeks,
Yeah,
I
but you'll
think.
have had your meetings by then,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
you can, if you have something you wanted to say, you could type it up and.
You're going to meet in the afternoon on the 7th, right?
Is that when we're meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
It
so we
is
should.
Assembly Day,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, good.
yeah, so
Now,
we
the
made
only
it.
question
say-
is if you want to go to any of the budget review sessions they're doing.
Yeah, I have that
Yeah,
printed
is
that
it on
off.
What time do
today?
they start?
They start at 1:15 with Elder Services.
Is that
Should we
today?
start at
Is that today?
11?
Is that today's meeting? Or is it next?
On the 5th,
Start at
It's
11?
meet at
7th.
11? I mean, the 7th.
March
Why do I have the
7th.
5th in?
They
Something's
start
happening
at
on the 5th.
1:15,
I don't know what it is.
You could start at noon, you could start at 11:30.
Was this
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
7th?
On the
7th.
7th.
Okay.
Because we're not meeting
I think
next week.
11:30 would be good, just in case
Well,
something,
I'm hoping if the train's on time, I have to take the bus to get down here in
Oh.
order to make the meeting, so
I can pick you up, Bill, if you want me to.
could you really?
I would. I would be happy to do that for
What
you.
a good girl you are. Okay. Anyway, I should be back, based upon past experience, about 11, so.
So we'll say 11:30?
11:30.
11:30.
We'll start at
Starts on-
11:30
very
on the
good.
7th.
Okay, 11:30 on the 7th. So just to put to have it official, I would like to just make a motion that we support and will embrace and go forward with the
The county
with
adopting.
the county adopting the
concept
RUS, of the RUS,
RUS.
and take the leadership role in that, and work with Dan and this group to put a fine point on it
Okay,
and
so-
define it.
So as I understand the motion before it's seconded, we're intending to support the concept, and we will be prepared to evaluate the next step based upon the report that we get on March
Right,
7th.
right, yeah.
So
We
if
support
that's the
taking
sense
the
of your
leadership
motion,
role, and we will
then I'll
have
second
it more
that.
defined.
Okay.
And including the regional umbrella services as a county function going
Yes.
forward. I mean, to be very clear,
All right, great.
okay? Is there a second?
I second it, yeah.
Do you know what that motion was?
I do, yes.
Yeah, good.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. All right.
Opposed,
Okay.
unanimous, great.
Thank
Okay,
you.
guys, you get some
Yep.
work, so thank you.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Thanks, Paul. Jerry?
Thanks, Mark.
I would like to ask that you do a letter to the editor in which you define what we've just done at wastewater and RUS, because otherwise people don't know, and they're dependent on press, which David does, but Times isn't here. And I think that's been one of the problems in the county, is getting information to the public unfiltered. And
Very good
one
suggestion.
way would be a letter to the editor, or my view in the Times, for one thing. which would get the information out where people need it.
Well, I think on the wastewater one, I think a press release would be appropriate, actually.
I do
So-
too. Yeah, I
The
actually
Russ one,
considered
we're a
doing
little
a,
bit ahead of ourselves because we didn't really do anything.
right.
So-
No,
But
we
at
just,
least
we just agreed that we wanted to be
assured
the
him that
lead
we are on
agency.
board,
But
and he
I-
needed that
I think a
assurance
press release
to go
for the
forward.
wastewater would be good now. Then in 2 weeks.
In
do
2
the
weeks,
press
we'll get
release on
one
Russ.
for the,
Right.
for the Russ.
And even if you send a letter to the town selectmen, each chair.
Yes.
So
Well-
there's some official communication.
Right.
Right.
I just
Well, if we
think
do
that
it
would be
as a
helpful.
press
I
release,
think
we can
that's-
send the
You
press
send it to
release to
them.
all the towns
Yeah.
and to the papers.
Okay.
That's a very good suggestion, Jerry. Thank you for that.
And I agree with you, Jerry. A lot of people don't, if they're not in the Barnstable area, they don't read the Patriot, and the
Right.
Patriot covers
Well,
the
they
county
don't, yeah.
more. So I keep asking. I mean, you know that I've asked the Provincetown Banner if we can do like an AP service, where you kind of put that into some even the community papers. So I think that's something that.
They're willing to pay us.
That's the holdup. I thought it was just mutual agreements that happen between people.
It's no good.
All right. No, you don't talk. Okay.
Could I also, hello?
Yes.
I didn't realize that this was on the agenda, the wastewater.
It was
Yeah,
on.
it's on the agenda.
It's
Yeah.
to speak
Special
about
commission items.
special commission items, but it didn't say wastewater, and I
Yeah.
have to
It
say
did
that
when I
that was
wrote
not
it,
very
but-
specific. I didn't even look at that.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I
Well,
knew
when
what
I
they
saw
wrote
it, it
about
said wastewater, but
I thought it said it.
Exactly.
Well, I read
It
about it
did
in
when
the
I
paper.
wrote it, but
Yeah.
it didn't get translated.
yeah, this has to be more clear to meet the open meeting law, too.
Yeah,
We have to
that's
be
not a
much more
very good,
specific. So I'll have to, but I did take a look at it, and I know it said wastewater.
Yeah, and the
somehow
one that
it-
I had in my mail
It
said
did,
wastewater.
right. Because
Yeah, I
I
think I
even
did as
pointed
well.
out in
How
my
come it came
email
out like
back
that?
that this has to be very specific.
It could be because Kara's out because it's school vacation week, so Barbara might have
some-
retranslated it.
Wow.
So.
Well, she has to. We have to give her a lesson on open meeting.
Yeah, that items have to be as
Maybe
specific as
ourselves as well.
possible. They have to identify the people that are participating or that are part of the discussion or that the discussion is about. I mean, it's really important to do that, so.
Okay. We're down.
Thank you.
Okay, we're down to reports, which we had just started to do that, and now,
And actually, I did mention it because I was at the Leadership Institute. I was invited to participate in that along with Florence Sheldon and Paul McCormick and Paul Nizwicki. And it was very interesting. They once Paul gave his story on how important it was to move forward, there was a what I call a very positive response from the people that were there about how important it was to get engaged and involved and let's say to tell people about what we're doing, and that's where I got that sense of we need to go where people are, which is what they were asking.
Oh,
and
right.
I think that's part of what we do when we run for elections. We knock on doors and ask people to support us, and I think we need to take that same sort of mindset as we go forward with with the wastewater. So it was a very good experience for me, and I really enjoyed it. I think people were surprised at how much the county actually does. Again, heads that the town service breakout is an essential part of of that report because of how well it's received and how much it does for us in order
well,
to
compared to 2 years ago, when a lot of the boards of selectmen didn't really know what the county did, this time around, 2 years later, there was much more of an expression of understanding and appreciation for all the activities of the county. Some of the selectmen would say, I had no idea that the county provided this many services. And it started, actually, I thought, with Bud Dunham from Sandwich at the special commission meeting, when he provided the list of all the county services for the town of Sandwich. And when he said that had those services not been available, he would have not had enough funding in the town budget to be able to provide those. So, and that kind of started a dialogue, I think, among the managers too, where they're beginning to realize, and that translates to the boards. So I thought it was a much more positive visit, if you will, this time around than it was 2 years ago.
Yes.
don't you think?
Yeah, they looked at us like,
Yeah.
who are you guys?
Yeah, they didn't have to, yeah. it's like,
Now
who are
at least they know
And
who
you
we
have
are.
5 minutes.
Yeah,
Huh?
I know, that's exactly
Yeah.
That's what
right.
it was.
Right,
Who are you
right.
and why
We'll
do
give
why
you
are
5
here?
minutes on our agenda.
Right, yeah, actually, they we could have had
in
longer
Bourne,
discussions.
In
if,
Bourne, in Orleans,
Right.
in Truro, in, well,
And
Yeah,
I do
Benadryl,
believe that we
yeah.
are going to be going to Wellfleet in another week
In
or
May.
two.
Is it?
In May.
Oh, it's in
Is
May?
it May? And Provincetown has,
After Memorial Day.
after Memorial
After
Day, so it's
Memorial
that
Day.
far away, okay.
Okay.
Okay,
So that's your report,
Yeah.
Sheila?
I attended the Mass in Motion on Friday
Mhm.
and kicked that off, and it was
Got good press
great little,
coverage.
very, very good press coverage, and you know, Beth deserves a lot of credit, and all of our departments. She's really it's a mutual cooperation between. It was spearheaded with Beth, but it's part of the cooperative extension and the health department have components in this, as well as identifying several towns across the region that have maybe higher incidence of obesity and that sort of thing within the schools. So they'll be working with the schools. They're working with the schools and police on safe streets. There's a lot of different initiatives in this, and it's also extending over to the islands. So there's a component where we're working together over there. Beth has really done a great job, and you could see that she has the respect of many people, not only across the region, but in the higher levels of state government as well. She's done a crack-up job, and so that was a wonderful, a wonderful event.
So what are
And-
they doing specifically about nutrition and obesity?
Yes, well, they're working with the food pantries, and they have, they've already, a lot of the initiatives that were called for in this grant process were things that we were doing on a smaller scale. So as far as working with the pantries and educating not only the public as to what are healthy food choices, and if you go into Stop and Shop, and I've noticed this more than, and I've heard people say, "Oh, what a great idea," when other people are shopping next to me, because they'll say if you're donating to your food pantry, these are good items, these are healthy items. So it's helping people instead of just putting a bunch of macaroni constantly
Right.
in a box, in a bag for people. They're really identifying still low-cost foods that they can donate to people. Also training the people in the food pantry in how to help people gather what they're going to be getting at these food, what's going to be, what's fresh and what isn't, and menus that they can use, that sort of thing. But also working with the schools on nutrition programs, schools with exercise and environment programs, safe streets, how we can get these kids more active.
Senior centers? Are they
And
gonna
they
work
will
with
be
senior
they'll be
centers?
doing something. I'm not sure about the senior centers, but it is an overall region of healthy. And the health department now has a little bit of an infusion of funds to continue on with some of the tobacco efforts and the anti-smoking efforts, and also working with the. So it really is an exercise that you can't just be. We're seeing an increase in obesity. We're seeing a tremendous increase across the nation and across even our own region on type 2 diabetes in children. And as a nurse, those things always happen around 40 or 50 when people became less active, and they've gained that adult weight that we all are struggling with. And it for some who aren't active enough, it can go into type 2, which can be reversed with good nutrition and exercise. So if we get these habits built into young people today, hopefully there'll be habits that will be with them for a lifetime. So it's $60,000. It's over I think it's each year for 5
per
years.
year.
Yeah.
$60,000 per year for 5 years to
years.
implement this.
Yeah.
Yes, for 5 years. So it's really a terrific grant, and it really just goes to show you the work. Again, they were ready for that grant. Something like the Chatham effort and wastewater. They had all the components ready, and when this money came forward, they were able to really be a lead in that.
Did
So-
they include the people from Provincetown?
Yes,
That
there-
are in their little
Yes.
weight loss exercise program?
I do think that there is something in Provincetown, and also while we
Like
had
Austin
Arbach there, Commissioner, or I kept calling him Secretary Arbach of Public Health. Not only did we thank him for that, but I did lay on him big time about Lyme disease. So I just want to give Brenda Bolin a shout out there that, yes, I'm out there lobbying for other monies as well, and talking about the good work she's going to be offering the state.
Right. On the Lyme
In there.
disease, being a member of the AARP, I was notified that Lyme disease is the #1 disease that concerns seniors. And the issue is, because seniors have more time and they're active and they're outside, they become more susceptible to it. So it's very important to, to recognize how important it is to a community that 34% are over 55, that, because they have the time and they're active,
Right.
they become more susceptible.
Right, yeah, you're hanging out there in the woods and hiking around and
all
kayaking
those
out in the
wellness
salt
things,
marshes.
Yeah.
Well, especially here, I mean, we have a healthy older population, thank
Well,
God.
I attended the special commission last week, and I know you guys were doing something else. But as we all know, what their vote was on wastewater. But they are really ready to wrap this up. And I think they'd like to wrap it up at their next meeting, which is February 27th, which is next Wednesday.
29th.
29th, rather. I can't get my dates straight
No.
to save myself.
Yeah, this is leap year.
Oh, God.
I don't know that it will actually be the last meeting. There may be one more. But they really, I saw the agenda for next week, and it's county governance and, really kind of wrapping up some of the decisions
They
that
meet
they
at
have not
6 or
yet made,
6:30?
6:30. And I'm not sure where yet, because the room hasn't been confirmed.
Because they just inquired, I think they're gonna meet here, and they were
Here.
wondering whether we were in there. They might be meeting earlier, so don't,
Okay, and
earlier
excuse
than
me, and they're
6:30?
I
not,
don't know.
they're not meeting tonight.
no.
No,
Okay.
they're not meeting tonight.
Okay, so you're thinking that they are meeting on the 29th.
29th.
I'm pretty sure the
All
29th,
right,
yeah.
so I'll put that down and say, I'll put
But
down
the
6
time
o'clock
is
for
to be
now.
determined, I would
Okay.
say.
Okay.
All right, well,
That's all I have to report.
I just wanted to
No,
mention.
Mark,
Yeah,
we
Mark
haven't had
has
Mark's
something.
report
Yeah,
yet.
just, I did mention earlier, but one of my reports was you guys should have all the
Yeah, I have
budget
that.
review sessions, and the ones
you
most
hand out-
closest to home are on March 14th. No, you should have gotten an email from Janice.
Okay.
If you don't,
Yeah.
you can have it.
All right, so
I
it's
think I
from
have it in
Janice.
here.
All right.
And
there's
then the
nothing,
other-
is there anything
Here it
today?
is.
nothing
Today. No, it
Nothing
starts
anything
next week.
today.
Okay.
Economic development
Yeah, on the
is
29th.
next week, and the
And
Arts Foundation.
You had mentioned, Pat, since it's the fifth Wednesday, not meeting on the 29th, which is fine with me.
Right.
We didn't have any agenda items. So the next meeting will be the
It's the
7th
fifth week, yeah.
at 11:30
Yeah, right.
do the RUS discussion. I'll be in Boston, but that's okay. We'll-
Yeah, you'll have met
Why don't you
before
just
then a
resend-
Yeah,
couple
we're
of
gonna,
times
I just sent them
probably.
an email, see if we can meet next Wednesday, actually.
Okay,
Why don't
good.
you just resend the Janice thing?
Yeah, and then I wanted to let you know that the Buy Fresh, Buy Local Cape Cod is having their annual meeting on Monday, March 12th, from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Cultural Center of Cape Cod
Oh,
at 307 Old Main Street in South Yarmouth.
March, what day?
March 12th, Monday,
March 12th.
5:30 to 7:30. And they'll have local and delicious food, a raw
I know.
bar, butternut bisque,
I'm
create your
missing
own
that.
challenge
You and I went to that the
station.
last time, remember?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I
Oh, the
missed
food
it
is
last
so
year.
good.
Oh, that Blue
I-
Bistro, oh,
At the Cultural Center in Yarmouth, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
great
Yes.
venue.
Yes,
And
it
if you
is.
wish, you're supposed to RSVP, so I will RSVP.
Yeah, would you do that for
Okay.
all of us, please? Because I already
Yeah,
put that
please
on my
do.
calendar.
Please do.
5:30
I
to
wouldn't miss
7:30.
that.
I know.
No, I had
God,
it the
that's
first
wonderful.
year. It was at Willie's, or a couple of about 3 years ago. It was at Willie's gym,
In,
Yeah.
and that
in
was like one
Wellfleet?
of their first efforts in that. Yeah, and it was
At East Ham or
right. It was
whichever,
yeah,
East Ham.
it was terrific then. But I think it has
It's grown.
it's
Yeah.
grown and it's a
Oh,
little
no
bit more.
question, yeah. I'll bet you there'll be more people there and a lot more discussion, especially about fish. I'm really looking forward to the,
Yeah, they're going to drop it off here. We're going to have Bill do it on Wednesdays. We can get
You know
our
how,
weekly
remember
fish.
one of the chefs talked about the catch of the day and how they wanted to incorporate catch of the day
Yeah.
with their Buy Fresh, Buy Local,
Yeah.
so that they could say, and they made
And they were
arrangements
suppo-
with the
they were-
fishermen to be able to
They were supposed to
get.
be doing this as part of Tim Frey's down at the farm, right?
Yeah.
Excuse me, Mark.
Right.
These only have Pat signatures.
That's
correct?
just Pat, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
Okay.
you're on top.
So did
And this
that
one's
ever
on the
start?
side because it doesn't have a.
That, the fish, the
Well, that's
fish
why
thing?
I'm hoping
Yeah,
that,
we'll have
well,
to
he
have
started it in his restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the name of it?
But also,
I
it was
can't
like
remember the name of
the Buy
restaurant.
Fresh Fish
Was that the Blue
Cooperative. It
Bistro?
was like a co-op.
We did
thing.
it here.
Yeah, we did
last,
do it last.
Can't remember now, last spring or last fall.
Yeah, and I think
did,
it's
yeah.
going to pick up again once the
season
spring
picks
comes
up?
in. Yeah, the
Yeah.
season and that sort of thing.
That's it
That's
for
it
you?
for me, yes.
Okay.
Okay, then I'll entertain your motion to adjourn. Do you
And
have
I will
anything else?
second, I do not have
Okay.
anything else, I will second
Those in
that.
favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at,
12 o'clock, just about.
My gosh.
Yes, 5 of
2 hours
12.
exactly.
but look how much we accomplished in 2 hours. That was pretty good.
Courage.
We gave all the work out to other people.
Squirrel.